Marcus Chun thought he was having the worst day of his career when his own crew fired him over botched repairs that saved their lives twice. What they didn't know was that those two failed fixes weren't accidents. They were masterpieces of engineering that prevented catastrophic disasters no one else even saw coming. But here's the real twist that'll make your jaw drop. Marcus wasn't just any engineer. He was the heir to the largest shipbuilding empire in human space, working undercover to understand the industry from the ground up. When his former crewmates discover who they really fired, and when alien threats start targeting human ships with deadly precision, they'll learn that sometimes the person you underestimate the most is exactly the one you need to save everything you care about. This is the story of how one man's failures became humanity's greatest victories, and how being fired was the best thing that ever happened to the galaxy. Because when you own half the ships in space, and everyone thinks you're nobody, you can accomplish things that would make even aliens think twice about messing with humanity. Get ready for a tale where every mistake is actually genius. Every dismissal leads to triumph. And with a quiet guy, fixing your engines might just be the most powerful human you'll ever meet. Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better decades, and stepped back from the merchant vessel's primary drive core. The massive fusion reactor hummed with a frequency that most engineers would call perfect, but Marcus heard the subtle harmonic distortion that meant trouble was coming in about 72 hours. He had just prevented a catastrophic containment failure that would have vaporized the ship and everyone within a 10-kilometer radius, but his crewmates would never know it. "Chun, what the hell did you do to my engine?" Captain Torres stormed into the engine bay, her face red with fury. Behind her, the rest of the crew filed in with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright disgust. Marcus had seen those looks before, too many times to count. "I performed routine maintenance on the magnetic containment field generators," Marcus replied calmly, not bothering to explain the micro-adjustments he had made to the plasma flow regulators that had actually saved their lives. "The readings should be within normal parameters now." "Within normal parameters?" First Officer Reeves laughed bitterly. "The efficiency readings dropped by 3%. Do you have any idea how much fuel that costs us over a long haul?" Marcus suppressed a sigh. The efficiency drop was temporary, a necessary side effect of preventing the containment field from developing a resonance cascade that would have torn through the ship's hull like paper. In 24 hours, the system would stabilize and actually run 4% more efficiently than before. But explaining quantum plasma dynamics to people who barely understood basic fusion theory was like trying to teach poetry to a rock. "I can restore the efficiency if you want," Marcus offered, though he hoped they would refuse. Undoing his work would put them right back on track for the containment failure. "Damn right you'll restore it," Torres snapped. "But not until after we drop you off at the next station. I'm done with your incompetence, Chun. You're fired." The words hit the rest of the crew like a physical blow, but Marcus felt only a familiar hollow sensation in his chest. This was the fourth ship he had been fired from in 2 years, always for the same reason. He fixed problems that no one else could see, prevented disasters that would never happen now, and got blamed for the side effects of his genius. "I understand," Marcus said quietly. "I'll pack my things." As the crew filed out, muttering among themselves about finding a real engineer at the next port, Marcus began collecting his tools. Each one was worth more than most people made in a year, precision instruments crafted by the finest manufacturers in human space. The crew assumed he had bought them secondhand or stolen them. They never questioned why a supposedly mediocre engineer had access to equipment that most ship owners could only dream of. The truth was something Marcus had been carrying alone for 3 years now. His real name was not Marcus Chun, immigrant from the outer colonies trying to make his way in the galaxy. His real name was Marcus Chun Nakamura, heir to the Chun Nakamura Shipbuilding Corporation, the largest starship manufacturer in human space. His family's company built 60% of all human vessels, from tiny courier ships to massive dreadnoughts that protected Earth's expanding territories. 3 years ago, fresh out of the Imperial Engineering Academy with the highest scores in the institution's history, Marcus had proposed to his father that he spend time working on civilian ships to understand the industry from the ground up. It was supposed to give him insight into how their designs performed in real-world conditions, help him become a better engineer, and eventually a better leader of the family business. His father, CEO David Chinakamura, had agreed with the condition that Marcus take an assumed identity and work his way up through merit alone. No family connections, no special treatment, just skill and determination. It had seemed like a brilliant plan at the time. The reality had been 3 years of frustration, watching inferior repairs pass for acceptable while his superior work was dismissed as incompetence. The problem was that most engineers in the civilian sector were trained to fix obvious problems with obvious solutions. They did not have the education or the equipment to detect the subtle quantum-level issues that Marcus routinely identified and corrected. When Marcus prevented a warp core breach by adjusting the antimatter flow patterns, the crew saw only that their maximum speed had dropped by 0.03%. When he reinforced hull sections that would have failed under stress, they complained about the additional weight. When he upgraded their sensor array to detect cloaked ships, they grumbled about the power consumption. It was like being a master chef criticized for adding too much salt to a dish that would have been poisonous without it. Marcus sealed his tool case and slung his personal bag over his shoulder. Through the viewport, he could see the approaching bulk of Meridian Station, a massive trading hub that served as a crossroads for dozens of shipping routes. It was not a bad place to be stranded, all things considered. He could probably find another ship within a few days, though he was beginning to wonder if there was any point in continuing this charade. "Hey, Marcus." The voice belonged to Elena Vasquez, the ship's communications officer, and the only crew member who had ever treated him with basic courtesy. She stood in the doorway of the engine bay, looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry about this. Torres is just frustrated about the profit margins this quarter." "It's all right, Elena," Marcus replied with a genuine smile. "I understand her position." "No, it's not all right," Elena insisted. "You've saved our asses more times than anyone wants to admit. Remember that pirate attack near the Vega system? If you hadn't reinforced the shield generators, we would have been sitting ducks." Marcus remembered it well. The modifications he had made to their defensive systems had increased their shield strength by 30% and reduced recharge time by half. The crew had complained about the power drain right up until the pirates opened fire. "The shields held," Marcus said simply, "because of you. And that time our life support systems started failing. Everyone else was ready to put us all in cryo and hope for the best, but you had us breathing clean air again in 6 hours. That had been a particularly challenging repair. A cascade failure in the atmosphere processors had been flooding their air with trace amounts of nitrogen compounds that would have caused brain damage within days. Marcus had not only fixed the immediate problem, but redesigned the entire filtration system to be more robust and efficient. "I was just doing my job," Marcus said. Elena shook her head. "You do everyone else's job better than they do. It's not fair." As they docked with Meridian Station, Marcus found himself thinking about Elena's words. For 3 years, he had been trying to prove himself in an environment that was not designed to recognize his particular talents. Maybe it was time to try a different approach. Meridian Station bustled with activity as merchants, travelers, and crew members moved between ships. The massive structure housed over 50,000 permanent residents and served as a temporary home for twice that many visitors on any given day. Marcus made his way through the crowded corridors toward the commercial district, where he could find temporary lodging while he figured out his next move. The station's central hub was dominated by a massive holographic display showing shipping schedules, commodity prices, and news feeds from across human space. As Marcus paused to check the departure board, a news story caught his attention. Reports continue to come in of merchant vessels suffering mysterious system failures throughout the Outer Rim territories, the newsreader was saying. The latest incident occurred just yesterday, when the cargo hauler Prosperity experienced a complete power failure that left them drifting helplessly until rescue arrived. This marks the 15th such incident in the past month, leading some experts to speculate about possible sabotage or a new type of cyber attack targeting civilian ships. Marcus frowned. System failures were rarely mysterious if you knew what to look for. Most likely, these ships were experiencing problems that their engineers simply did not have the training or equipment to diagnose properly. It was the same pattern he had seen throughout his time in the civilian sector, just on a larger scale. He was about to continue on to find lodging when another news story began playing. In related news, Chin Nakamura Shipbuilding Corporation has announced a new initiative to provide free diagnostic services to any civilian vessel experiencing unexplained technical difficulties. CEO David Chin Nakamura stated that the company is committed to maintaining the highest safety standards throughout human space and will be dispatching teams of expert engineers to investigate these incidents. Marcus felt a surge of pride at his father's response to the crisis. It was exactly the kind of proactive approach that had made their company the leader in the industry. But it also made him think about his own situation. Here he was, one of the most highly trained engineers in human space, wandering around a space station looking for another crew that would not appreciate his abilities. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. As Marcus made his way deeper into the station, he began to formulate a plan. He had been working under an assumed identity for 3 years, but that did not mean he had to remain powerless. There were resources available to him, connections he could make, and problems he could solve that went far beyond fixing fusion reactors for ungrateful crews. The first step would be to establish himself as an independent contractor rather than seeking another berth as a regular crew member. He had enough personal funds to rent workshop space and purchase additional equipment. More importantly, he had the knowledge and skills to tackle the kind of complex problems that were plaguing merchant ships throughout the sector. Marcus found a small but well-equipped workshop for rent in the station's industrial sector. The owner, a grizzled former Navy engineer named Hans Mueller, was initially skeptical about renting to someone so young, but Marcus's credentials and willingness to pay 6 months in advance quickly changed his mind. "You sure you know what you're doing, kid?" Hans asked as they completed the rental agreement. "This is professional-grade equipment. Not the kind of stuff you want to tinker with if you don't know what you're doing." "I know what I'm doing," Marcus assured him. As Hans left him alone in the workshop, Marcus began unpacking his tools and setting up his workspace. For the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was where he belonged. No more hiding his abilities. No more watching inferior work pass for competence. No more being fired for preventing disasters that no one else could see. It was time to show the galaxy what real engineering looked like. The workshop came equipped with a subspace communications array, and Marcus used it to access the public databases containing information about the recent string of ship failures. As he reviewed the incident reports, patterns began to emerge that confirmed his suspicions. All of the affected ships were older models, at least 15 years old, and most had undergone recent repairs or upgrades. The failures were occurring in different systems on each ship, but they all shared common characteristics that suggested a deeper underlying problem. Marcus spent the next several hours analyzing the data, cross-referencing technical specifications with maintenance records and crew reports. Gradually, a picture emerged that was far more disturbing than simple mechanical failures or even sabotage. Someone was deliberately targeting older human ships with a sophisticated attack that exploited vulnerabilities in their older control systems. The attacks were designed to look like random failures, but they followed a specific pattern that would only be visible to someone with advanced knowledge of starship engineering. This was not the work of pirates or random criminals. This was a coordinated effort by someone with access to detailed technical specifications of human ships and the knowledge to exploit their weaknesses. As Marcus compiled his findings into a comprehensive report, he realized that he was probably the only person in the sector who had both the expertise to identify this pattern and the resources to do something about it. His former crewmates thought they had fired an incompetent engineer, but they had actually set loose the one person who might be able to save them all. The irony was not lost on him as he prepared to send his report to the relevant authorities. Getting fired might turn out to be the best thing that had ever happened to human space. 3 days after setting up his workshop on Meridian Station, Marcus received his first client through an unexpected source. Elena Vasquez appeared at his door, her usual confident demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. "Marcus, thank God you're still here," she said, practically stumbling into the workshop. "We need your help. The ship, something's wrong with everything." Marcus set down the quantum diagnostic tool he had been calibrating and gave Elena his full attention. "What happened?" "It started about 6 hours after we left the station," Elena explained, her words coming in a rush. "First, the navigation systems began giving us false readings. Torres thought it was just a calibration error, so we tried to correct it manually. Then, the life support started acting up. Nothing major at first, just slight fluctuations in the air recycling. But now the fusion reactor is showing instabilities that our engineer says are impossible." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's recycled air. "What kind of instabilities?" "Resonance patterns in the magnetic containment field. Our new engineer, Rodriguez, says the readings don't make sense. He's never seen anything like it." The pieces fell into place in Marcus's mind with terrifying clarity. The ship was experiencing exactly the kind of cascade failure he had been seeing in the incident report from across the sector. If his analysis was correct, they had maybe 12 hours before the containment field collapsed completely. "Where's your ship docked?" Marcus asked, already grabbing his tools. "Base 17. "Marcus, Torres won't pay you. She's too proud to admit we made a mistake firing you." "I'm not doing this for Torres," Marcus replied. "Elena, there are 6 people on that ship, including you. That's what matters." They made their way through the station's corridors at a pace just short of running. Elena filled in the details as they walked. After leaving Meridian Station, the merchant vessel had made a routine jump to their next destination, but almost immediately began experiencing system problems. Their new engineer, fresh from a technical college on Mars, was completely out of his depth. "Rodriguez is a good kid," Elena said, "but he's book smart, you know? He doesn't have your instincts." Bay 17 housed the merchant vessel Lucky Strike, the same ship Marcus had been working on for the past 8 months. Seeing it again brought back a mixture of frustration and fondness. For all their faults, the crew had been his home for longer than any other posting. Captain Torres met them at the airlock, her face a mask of barely controlled desperation. "Chun, Elena said you might be able to help us." "I'll take a look," Marcus said simply. The ship's corridors felt familiar under his feet as they made their way to the engine room. The subtle vibrations in the deck plating told him immediately that his fears were justified. The harmonic distortions were building toward a resonance cascade that would tear the ship apart from the inside. Rodriguez, a young man barely out of his teens, looked up from the engine controls with relief written across his face. "Mr. Chun, Elena told me you used to work on this ship. I've never seen readings like these. The containment field is fluctuating in patterns that shouldn't be possible." Marcus studied the displays for several minutes, his trained eye picking out the telltale signs of external interference. This was not a natural system failure, or even a result of poor maintenance. Someone had introduced a virus into the ship's computer systems, one specifically designed to exploit vulnerabilities in older fusion reactors. "When did these problems start?" Marcus asked. "About 6 hours after departure," Torres replied. "Right after we completed our first jump." "Show me the navigation logs." As Rodriguez pulled up the requested data, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. The ship's course had been subtly altered during their jump, redirecting them toward a region of space that was supposedly uninhabited. If the reactor failed where they were currently headed, it would be days before anyone found the wreckage. "Captain, we need to change course immediately," Marcus said. "Head back toward the shipping lanes." "What? What?" Torres demanded. "Our cargo is time-sensitive. We can't afford delays." "Your cargo won't matter if we're all dead," Marcus replied bluntly. "Someone has infected your computer systems with a virus designed to cause a catastrophic reactor failure. We're being led into an ambush." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Rodriguez stared at Marcus with a mixture of awe and terror, while Torres looked like she was struggling to process the implications. "You're saying this was sabotage?" Elena asked quietly. "More than sabotage," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing over the diagnostic controls. This is a sophisticated attack using malware specifically designed to target older human ships. I've been tracking similar incidents across the sector for the past few days. But who would do something like this? Rodriguez stammered. Marcus paused his work, considering how much to reveal. The truth was that he suspected this was the work of one of humanity's alien rivals, possibly the Zephyrian Trade Consortium, which had been losing market share to human merchants for the past decade. But he could not prove it yet, and making accusations without evidence would only cause panic. I don't know yet, he said instead, but I can fix the immediate problem and get us out of here safely. For the next 4 hours, Marcus worked with an intensity that amazed even himself. The virus was incredibly sophisticated, embedded deep within the ship's operating system, and designed to resist conventional removal techniques. But Marcus had advantages that the virus's creators had not anticipated. His tools were cutting-edge prototypes from his family's research division, capable of analysis at the quantum level. More importantly, his understanding of starship systems went far beyond what any civilian engineer should possess. He did not just know how the ship worked. He understood why it was designed the way it was, because his family's company had built the reactor core. As he worked, Marcus began to see the true scope of the attack. The virus was not just causing system failures. It was also gathering intelligence about human ship designs and transmitting that data to an unknown recipient. Whoever was behind this was not just trying to destroy individual ships, but to steal the technological secrets that gave humanity its edge in space. There, Marcus said finally, stepping back from the control panel. The virus is contained, and the reactor is stable. We should be safe to jump back to the shipping lanes. Contained, not destroyed? Elena asked. Marcus nodded. I want to study it further. This thing is too sophisticated to have been created by common criminals. Someone with serious resources is behind this. Torres activated the ship's communications array. This is Captain Torres of the merchant vessel Lucky Strike. We are declaring an emergency and requesting immediate assistance from any coalition security forces in the area. The response came within minutes. Lucky Strike, this is the patrol cruiser Defiant. Please state the nature of your emergency. We have been the target of cyber warfare, Torres replied. Our engineer has identified and contained a virus designed to cause catastrophic system failure. Understood, Lucky Strike. Please transmit all relevant data and maintain your current position. We are dispatching a specialist team to assist. As they waited for the security forces to arrive, Marcus continued his analysis of the virus. The more he studied it, the more impressed and disturbed he became. The code was elegant in its complexity, using techniques that pushed the boundaries of what should be possible with conventional programming. Marcus, Elena said quietly, how did you know what to look for? I mean, Rodriguez is a qualified engineer, but he didn't even recognize what was happening. Marcus chose his words carefully. I've been studying similar incidents across the sector. Once you know the pattern, it becomes easier to identify. It was not entirely a lie, but it was not the whole truth either. The reality was that Marcus had access to classified intelligence reports through his family's government contracts, as well as technical specifications that were not available to civilian engineers. His ability to quickly identify and counter the virus had as much to do with his background as his skills. The arrival of the coalition security team brought both relief and complications. The team leader, Commander Sarah Kim, was a competent officer who quickly grasped the seriousness of the situation. But her technical specialist, Lieutenant Jackson, was clearly skeptical of Marcus's analysis. You're saying a civilian engineer identified and contained a virus that our best cyber warfare experts haven't even seen yet? Jackson asked, reviewing Marcus's data. The evidence speaks for itself, Marcus replied calmly. Commander Kim studied the diagnostic reports with a thoughtful expression. Mr. Chun, your analysis is remarkably thorough. Where did you receive your training? Imperial Engineering Academy, class of 2157, Marcus replied, giving his real credentials. Jackson nearly choked on his coffee. The academy? But you're working as a civilian merchant engineer. I prefer hands-on experience to desk jobs, Marcus said with a shrug. What he did not mention was that his graduating class had included only 12 students, all of whom had gone on to high-level positions in government or major corporations. The Academy only accepted the most promising candidates from across human space, and its graduates were essentially guaranteed successful careers in starship engineering. Commander Kim seemed to pick up on the subtext. Mr. Chun, would you be willing to assist our investigation into these attacks? Your expertise could be invaluable. I'd be happy to help, Marcus replied. But I have some conditions, such as I want access to all incident reports from similar attacks, as well as any intelligence data you might have on potential suspects. And I want to work independently, not as part of your official team. Commander Kim exchanged glances with Lieutenant Jackson before nodding. That could be arranged. We'll transfer the relevant files to your personal account. As the security team prepared to leave, taking samples of the virus for further analysis, Marcus found himself thinking about the larger implications of what they had discovered. This was not just an attack on individual ships, but a coordinated campaign against human shipping throughout the sector. Captain Torres, Marcus said as the crew prepared to resume their journey, I need to ask you something. In the time I worked on this ship, did I ever do anything that seemed unnecessary or counterproductive? Torres looked uncomfortable. Well, there were times when your modifications seemed to reduce efficiency or add complexity. But the ship never suffered any major system failures while I was aboard, Marcus pointed out. No, it didn't, Torres admitted. And now that I think about it, we haven't had any serious problems with the systems you worked on. Elena smiled. I told you he was good. Marcus felt a moment of satisfaction, but it was tempered by the realization of what lay ahead. The attack on the Lucky Strike was just one incident in what appeared to be a much larger campaign. Someone was waging war against human shipping, using weapons that most people did not even recognize as weapons. Captain, I need to ask one more favor, Marcus said. I'd like you to spread the word among the merchant community about what happened here. Other ships need to know what to look for. Of course, Torres replied. And Marcus, I owe you an apology. We should never have fired you. You did what you thought was right with the information you had, Marcus replied diplomatically. But maybe next time, try to look at the bigger picture before making decisions. As the Lucky Strike departed for its original destination, now safely escorted by the patrol cruiser, Marcus returned to his workshop with a new sense of purpose. The files from Commander Kim were already waiting in his inbox, and what he saw when he opened them confirmed his worst fears. The attacks were happening throughout human space, not just in the Outer Rim territories. Ships were disappearing or suffering mysterious failures at an alarming rate, and the pattern was accelerating. Whoever was behind this was preparing for something big. Marcus activated his workshop's most secure communications channel and began composing a message to his father. It was time to bring the full resources of the Chin Nakamura Corporation into play, whether his cover was blown or not. The war for human space had already begun. Most people just did not know it yet. But Marcus Chin Nakamura was about to change that. Marcus stared at the holographic display showing the distribution of ship failures across human space, and the pattern that emerged made his blood run cold. What had initially appeared to be random attacks was actually a carefully orchestrated campaign designed to cripple humanity's trade networks and isolate key systems from each other. The secure message from his father had arrived 6 hours ago, along with classified intelligence reports that painted an even darker picture than Marcus had imagined. The Chin Nakamura Corporation's intelligence division had been tracking unusual activities by the Zephyrian Trade Consortium for months, but they had not connected it to the ship failures until Marcus provided the missing piece of the puzzle. The virus samples you recovered match technology that our sources have seen in Zephyrian research facilities, David Chin Nakamura had written. But the sophistication suggests they had help from someone with intimate knowledge of human ship designs. We may be dealing with a traitor. Marcus leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working for 18 hours straight, analyzing data and trying to predict where the next attack would come. The pattern was becoming clearer, but it was also becoming more terrifying. The Zephyrians were not just trying to destroy human ships. They were systematically targeting the vessels that carried critical supplies to frontier colonies and military outposts. If the attacks continued, entire systems would be cut off from the rest of human space within weeks. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on his public communication channel. Marcus was surprised to see that it came from Elena Vasquez aboard the Lucky Strike. "Marcus, we just received a distress call from the passenger liner Serenity's Dream. They're experiencing the same kind of system failures we had, but their engineer doesn't know how to fix it. They have over 300 civilians on board, including families with children. Can you help them?" Marcus was already reaching for his tools before he finished reading the message. The Serenity's Dream was a luxury liner that ran regular routes between the inner colonies, exactly the kind of high-profile target that would maximize the psychological impact of an attack. "Send me their location," Marcus replied. "I'm on my way." Getting to the Serenity's Dream required hiring a fast courier ship, something that would have been impossible on a civilian engineer's salary, but was no problem for someone with access to the Chin Nakamura family accounts. The pilot, a former military officer named Jake Morrison, asked no questions about why his passenger was willing to pay triple the usual rate for emergency transport. The journey took 4 hours, during which Marcus used the courier ship's communications array to contact the Serenity's Dream directly. The situation was worse than Elena had described. The passenger liner was not just experiencing system failures. It was actively under attack by a Zephyrian strike force that had been lying in wait. "Mr. Chun, this is Captain Martinez," the liner's captain said over the comm channel. "I understand you're an expert on these system failures. We're in desperate need of assistance." "I'm en route, Captain. What's your current status?" "We've lost main propulsion, and our defensive shields are operating at 30% efficiency. There are 3 Zephyrian ships holding position just outside weapons range. They're not attacking yet, but they're clearly waiting for something." Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The virus was not meant to destroy the ship immediately. It was designed to disable their defenses and leave them vulnerable to capture. The Zephyrians wanted the passengers alive, probably as hostages or bargaining chips. "Captain, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy," Marcus said. "I want you to begin broadcasting a general distress signal on all frequencies, but include specific technical details about your system failures. Make it very clear that you're dealing with a computer virus. Why would we want to advertise our vulnerability? Because other ships need to know what they're up against, and because help is coming." What Marcus did not mention was that he had already activated emergency protocols within the Chin Nakamura intelligence network. Coalition military forces were being alerted, and several ships belonging to his family's private security fleet were converging on their location. When the courier ship dropped out of hyperspace near the Serenity's Dream, Marcus could see the 3 Zephyrian vessels maintaining their ominous watch. The alien ships were sleek predators compared to the bulky human designs, built for speed and stealth rather than cargo capacity. "Holy hell," Jake muttered as he maneuvered toward the passenger liner's docking bay. "Those are military-grade ships. What kind of trouble are you mixed up in, Chun?" "The kind that threatens everyone," Marcus replied grimly. The Serenity's Dream was a beautiful ship under normal circumstances, with graceful curves and luxurious accommodations that made it popular with wealthy travelers. Now it looked like a wounded whale, drifting helplessly while predators circled. Captain Martinez met Marcus at the airlock with unconcealed relief. She was a veteran spacer with 20 years of experience, but the current situation was clearly beyond anything she had trained for. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Our engineer is competent, but this is outside his expertise. How many passengers do you have aboard?" 312, plus 47 crew members. Most of the passengers are civilians traveling between the colonies for business or family visits. Marcus followed Captain Martinez through the ship's corridors, noting the signs of barely controlled panic among the passengers. Parents held children close while crew members tried to maintain an air of calm professionalism. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. The Serenity's Dream's engineering section was larger and more sophisticated than anything Marcus had worked on during his time in the civilian sector. The ship's engineer, Chief Rodriguez, looked up from the diagnostic displays with exhaustion written across his face. "Mr. Chun, Captain Martinez said you might be able to help us. I've been fighting this virus for 6 hours, but every time I think I've contained it, it adapts and finds a new way to spread." Marcus studied the displays, and his worst fears were confirmed. This was not the same virus that had infected the Lucky Strike. It was an evolved version, more sophisticated and aggressive. The Zephyrians were learning from each encounter, improving their cyber weapons based on human countermeasures. "This is a military-grade attack," Marcus said. "Whoever designed this has access to advanced AI technology." I. Rodriguez's eyes widened. "But that's illegal under coalition law." "Only for human ships," Marcus replied. "The Zephyrians never signed the AI restriction treaties." As Marcus began his analysis of the virus, he realized that conventional countermeasures would not be sufficient. The malware was too sophisticated, too adaptive. He would need to use techniques that were not yet widely known, drawing on research from his family's most advanced projects. "Chief Rodriguez, I need you to evacuate all non-essential personnel from this section and lock down the computer core. I'm going to try something experimental." "What kind of experimental?" Marcus hesitated, knowing that what he was about to do would reveal capabilities that no civilian engineer should possess. But with over 300 lives at stake, he could not afford to hold back. "I'm going to fight AI with AI," he said finally. The quantum processing unit that Marcus extracted from his tool case was about the size of a briefcase and worth more than most people's homes. It contained an experimental AI system developed by Shin Nakamura's research division, designed specifically for combating hostile software. "Where did you get that?" Rodriguez whispered in awe. "Graduation present," Marcus replied, which was technically true even if it left out a few important details. Connecting the quantum processor to the ship's computer core required modifications that pushed the boundaries of what the system was designed to handle. But Marcus had helped design some of these components, and he knew exactly how far he could push them. The AI came online with a subtle shift in the ship's ambient energy patterns. Unlike the aggressive Zephyrian virus, this system was designed to work in harmony with human technology, enhancing rather than subverting its capabilities. "Wow," Rodriguez breathed as the ship's efficiency readings began climbing steadily. "I've never seen anything like this." The battle between the two AI systems played out in microseconds of electronic warfare invisible to the human eye. Marcus watched the status displays with professional appreciation as his AI systematically identified and neutralized the Zephyrian virus, adapting its strategies in real time to counter each new attack. Captain Martinez to engineering. "Whatever you're doing down there, keep it up. Our shields are back to full strength, and propulsion is coming back online." But even as the Serenity's dream recovered its capabilities, the three Zephyrian ships began moving closer. Their crews had apparently realized that their cyber attack had failed and were preparing to use more direct methods. "China Bridge," Marcus called over the comm system. "I've neutralized the virus, but we're about to have bigger problems. Those Zephyrian ships are moving to attack positions." "Understood. All passengers to emergency stations. Crew, prepare for evasive maneuvers." Marcus felt the ship's artificial gravity fluctuate as Captain Martinez began taking evasive action. The Serenity's dream was fast for a passenger liner, but it was no match for dedicated military vessels. Then the cavalry arrived. 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their sleek profiles marking them as Chun Nakamura corporate security vessels. But Marcus knew that beneath their civilian designations, these ships mounted military-grade weapons and were crewed by former coalition officers. "Zephyrian vessels, this is the corporate security ship Defender," came the transmission. "You are in violation of coalition space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The lead Zephyrian ship responded by firing on the nearest corporate vessel, a mistake that proved to be their last. The security ships had been expecting a fight and were ready for it. What followed was not really a battle, so much as a demonstration of human military superiority. The corporate security ships moved with precision that spoke of extensive training and experience, while their weapons systems performed flawlessly under combat conditions. Within 10 minutes, 2 of the Zephyrian ships had been destroyed, and the third was fleeing toward the edge of the system. The immediate threat was over, but Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Mr. Chun, Captain Martinez, said over the comm system, "I don't know how you did what you did, but you saved over 300 lives today. The passengers want to thank you personally." "That's not necessary, Captain. I was just doing my job." But as Marcus began disconnecting his quantum processor from the ship's systems, he realized that his cover was effectively blown. The capabilities he had just demonstrated were not something a civilian engineer should possess, and word would spread throughout the merchant community. Chief Rodriguez was staring at the quantum processor with unconcealed fascination. "Mr. Chun, that's military-grade hardware. How does a civilian engineer get access to something like that?" Marcus sealed the processor back into its case and met Rodriguez's eyes. "Let's just say I have connections in the right places." As the Serenity's dream continued toward its destination under escort by the corporate security ships, Marcus composed another encrypted message to his father. The situation was escalating beyond what they had initially anticipated. The Zephyrians were not just conducting random attacks. They were testing human defenses in preparation for something much larger. The cover identity that had seemed so important 3 years ago was becoming a liability. Marcus Chun, struggling civilian engineer, could only do so much. But Marcus Chun Nakamura, heir to the largest shipbuilding corporation in human space, could do whatever was necessary to protect his people. It was time to stop hiding and start fighting back. The war had begun, and humanity needed all its champions on the front lines. The summons came while Marcus was reviewing intelligence reports in his workshop on Meridian Station. Admiral Sarah Hawkins, commander of the Coalition's Outer Rim Defense Force, was requesting his immediate presence at the sector military headquarters. The message was polite, but carried the unmistakable weight of military authority. Marcus knew this day would come. Word of his involvement in saving the Serenity's dream had spread throughout the merchant community and beyond. Combined with his earlier work analyzing the cyber attacks, his activities had drawn the attention of people who asked uncomfortable questions about civilian engineers with military-grade capabilities. The shuttle ride to the military station gave Marcus time to prepare for what was likely to be a difficult conversation. He had been living a double life for 3 years, and that deception was about to end one way or another. Admiral Hawkins received him in her private office, a Spartanly decorated space that spoke of a career military officer who valued function over form. She was a veteran of the Zephyrian border conflicts and had a reputation for directness that Marcus found refreshing after years of dealing with civilian bureaucracy. "Mr. Chun," she said without preamble, or should I say, "Mr. Chun Nakamura?" Marcus felt his carefully constructed cover identity crumble. "You know, I've known since the Serenity's dream incident. Corporate security ships don't respond to random distress calls, especially not with that level of coordination and firepower. Someone with serious influence ordered that rescue operation." Admiral Hawkins activated a holographic display showing Marcus's service record, or rather, the service record of Marcus Chun Nakamura. Academic achievements, family connections, and classified projects were all laid bare. Graduated top of your class from the Imperial Engineering Academy. Son of David Chun Nakamura, CEO of the largest shipbuilding corporation in human space. Access to classified technology and intelligence reports. And for the past 3 years, you've been playing dress-up as a civilian engineer. "I wanted to understand the industry from the ground up," Marcus said. "My father thought it would make me a better leader. And instead, you became something much more valuable," Admiral Hawkins replied. "You became someone who could see problems that others missed, prevent disasters that no one else recognized, and fight enemies that most people didn't even know existed." The Admiral walked to the viewport, gazing out at the star field beyond. "Mr. Chun Nakamura, I'm going to ask you a direct question. and I want a direct answer. Are you ready to stop playing games and start taking responsibility for what you know? Marcus considered his options. He could continue the charade, maintain his cover identity, and return to his workshop. But the attacks were escalating, and more people were going to die unless someone with his capabilities took action. What do you need me to do? Admiral Hawkins smiled for the first time since he had entered the office. I need you to save human civilization. The briefing that followed painted a picture even darker than Marcus's worst fears. The cyber attacks on merchant ships were just the opening phase of a much larger Zephyrian operation. Intelligence reports suggested that a massive invasion fleet was being assembled beyond the edge of Coalition space, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Zephyrians have been planning this for years, Admiral Hawkins explained. They've been systematically gathering intelligence about our ship designs, our trade routes, and our defensive capabilities. The virus attacks serve multiple purposes. They gather data, they sow confusion, and they isolate key systems for mutual support. How long do we have? Marcus asked. Intelligence estimates suggest the main attack will come within 2 weeks. The Zephyrians are waiting for their cyber attacks to achieve maximum disruption before launching their conventional forces. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing Zephyrian fleet positions and projected attack routes. The aliens had chosen their timing well. Most of the Coalition's military forces were scattered across the Outer Rim, dealing with a merchant ship crisis. What about the traitor? Marcus asked. Someone with access to classified ship designs has been helping them. Admiral Hawkins's expression darkened. We have suspicions, but no proof. Someone high up in either the government or the corporate sector has been feeding information to the Zephyrians. Until we identify them, we have to assume that any plan involving official channels has been compromised. Then, we need to work outside official channels. Exactly what I was thinking, Admiral Hawkins replied. Mr. Nakamura, I'm offering you a temporary commission as a special advisor to the Defense Force. You would have broad authority to take whatever actions you deem necessary to counter the Zephyrian threat. Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. 3 years ago, he had been a privileged young man trying to prove himself. Now he was being asked to help save humanity from its most dangerous enemy. I accept, he said. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Marcus used his family's corporate resources to establish a covert intelligence network, drawing on contacts throughout the merchant community and the industrial sector. His years working undercover had given him connections that no military officer could match. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Elena Vasquez, who had become something of an informal intelligence coordinator among the merchant crews. She contacted Marcus with information that made his blood run cold. Marcus, we've been comparing notes with other ships that experience problems, she said over a secure communication channel. There's a pattern you need to know about. Every ship that was attacked had recently undergone maintenance or upgrades at one of 3 major corporate facilities. Marcus pulled up the data Elena was transmitting and felt his heart sink. All 3 facilities were owned by Meridian Dynamics, Nakamura's primary competitor in the shipbuilding industry. More importantly, all 3 facilities were overseen by Jonathan Pierce, the former Nakamura executive who had been fired 2 years ago for selling trade secrets. Elena, you've just identified our traitor, Marcus said grimly. The next phase of the investigation required resources that only the Nakamura Corporation could provide. Marcus contacted his father directly, using emergency protocols that had been established for exactly this kind of crisis. Son, I've been expecting your call, David Nakamura said from his office on Earth. Our intelligence division has been tracking Pierce's activities for months. We suspected he was up to something, but we didn't realize the scope until now. How much damage has he done? Catastrophic. Pierce had access to virtually every major ship design in our catalog before he was terminated. He's given the Zephyrians detailed specifications for everything from civilian freighters to military cruisers. Marcus felt the enormity of the situation crashing down on him. Pierce had not just betrayed the Nakamura Corporation. He had betrayed all of humanity. What about countermeasures? Can we update our ship designs to close the vulnerabilities he exposed? We're already working on it, his father replied. But it will take months to implement widespread changes, and we don't have that kind of time. Then, we need a different approach, Marcus said. Instead of defending against what the Zephyrians know, we need to turn their knowledge against them. David Nakamura was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? Pierce knows our ships inside and out, but he doesn't know everything. He left the company before we completed several classified projects. If we can deploy those technologies quickly enough, we might be able to surprise the Zephyrians. Which projects are you referring to? Marcus took a deep breath. The Ghost Fleet. The Ghost Fleet was the Nakamura Corporation's most classified project, a series of automated warships designed to operate without human crews. The ships were controlled by advanced AI systems that made them capable of coordination and tactics beyond what any human crew could achieve. The project had been shelved due to political concerns about AI warfare, but the current crisis called for desperate measures. Son, you're talking about deploying weapons that have never been tested in combat, his father warned. The political ramifications alone could destroy the company. The company won't matter if humanity loses this war, Marcus replied. How quickly can we deploy them? The prototype squadron is stored in a classified facility in the Centauri system. With emergency authorization, we could have them operational within 72 hours. Do it, Marcus said. And father? We're going to need more than just the prototypes. How many additional Ghost ships could we build if we converted every available production facility? David Nakamura was quiet for several minutes as he ran calculations. Working around the clock, ignoring all safety regulations and cost considerations, maybe 50 ships in 2 weeks. Not enough, Marcus said, but it's a start. As he ended the communication with his father, Marcus realized that he had just committed himself and his family to a course of action that would either save humanity or destroy everything they had built. The next step was the most dangerous, confronting Jonathan Pierce directly. Intelligence reports placed Pierce at a Meridian Dynamics facility in the Vega system, ostensibly overseeing the installation of security upgrades to merchant vessels. Marcus knew that these upgrades were actually mechanisms for planting Zephyrian viruses. Getting to Pierce would require subtlety and resources that Marcus had not used since his academy days. But Admiral Hawkins had given him broad authority, and he intended to use it. The corporate shuttle that carried Marcus to the Vega system was armed and escorted, but to outside observers it appeared to be a routine business trip. When they docked at the Meridian Dynamics facility, Marcus was accompanied only by 2 bodyguards disguised as technical assistants. Pierce was waiting in his office, a lavishly decorated space that spoke of a man who enjoyed the fruits of betrayal. He looked up from his desk with a smile that died when he recognized his visitor. Marcus Nakamura, Pierce said slowly. I wondered when you would figure it out. Hello, Jonathan, Marcus replied. We need to talk. What followed was a conversation that revealed the full scope of Pierce's treachery. The man had not just sold technical specifications to the Zephyrians. He had helped them plan their entire invasion strategy. You never understood the bigger picture, Marcus, Pierce said with contempt. Humanity is too aggressive, too expansionist. The Zephyrians offer a chance for peaceful coexistence. Peaceful coexistence? Marcus laughed bitterly. They're planning to enslave or exterminate our entire species. Sometimes necessary sacrifices must be made for the greater good. Marcus felt his anger rising, but he kept his voice level. Jonathan, you have one chance to redeem yourself. Tell me everything you've told the Zephyrians, and help us prepare countermeasures. Pierce's answer was to reach for a concealed weapon, a decision that proved to be his last mistake. Marcus's bodyguards were former military operatives with reflexes honed by years of combat experience. As Pierce lay, dying on the floor of his office, Marcus searched the man's personal computer for intelligence about Zephyrian plans. What he found there made him realize that even his worst fears had been inadequate. The Zephyrian invasion fleet was not just large. It was massive beyond anything humanity had ever faced. And it was already moving toward coalition space. The war was beginning, and humanity had perhaps a week to prepare for the fight of its existence. The command center aboard the Nakamura flagship, indomitable, buzzed with activity as Marcus coordinated humanity's desperate defense. 5 days had passed since Pierce's death, and the Zephyrian invasion fleet had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Coalition territory, right on schedule. The enemy force was staggering in its scope. Over 800 warships supported by thousands of smaller vessels, all bearing down on humanity's core systems with murderous intent. Traditional military doctrine suggested that such a massive force would be unstoppable, but Marcus had spent the past week proving that traditional doctrine was inadequate for current circumstances. Ghost Fleet Alpha is in position, reported Commander Lisa Park, the AI specialist who had helped bring the automated warships online. All 50 vessels are responding perfectly to tactical commands. Marcus studied the holographic battle display, watching as the Ghost Fleet maneuvered with inhuman precision into attack formations. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering and artificial intelligence, capable of reaction times and coordination that no human crew could match. More importantly, they were immune to the cyber warfare tactics that had crippled so many human vessels. Admiral Hawkins to all fleet commanders came the voice over the communication system. The enemy will reach the outer defense line in 30 minutes. All ships, prepare for engagement. The coalition forces arrayed against the Zephyrians represented everything humanity could scrape together on short notice. 200 military vessels, 400 armed merchant ships, and Marcus's 50 Ghost Fleet prototypes. On paper, they were outnumbered almost 3-1. But Marcus had never been one to rely solely on numbers. "Elena, what's the status on the merchant network?" Marcus asked his former crewmate, who had volunteered to coordinate civilian vessels in the battle. "All ships are in position and ready," Elena replied from her command station. "I have to admit, when you first proposed using merchant vessels as part of our battle line, I thought you were crazy. But the modifications you've made to our ships are incredible." Marcus smiled grimly. The modifications had been anything but simple. Working around the clock for 5 days, teams of Nakamura engineers had retrofitted hundreds of civilian ships with military-grade shields, weapons, and, most importantly, the same AI-assisted defensive systems that protected the Ghost Fleet from cyber attacks. The merchant captains had initially been skeptical about trusting their ships to artificial intelligence, but that skepticism had evaporated when they saw the test results. Ships protected by Marcus's AI systems could shrug off Zephyrian virus attacks that would cripple conventional vessels. "Contact the Lucky Strike," Marcus ordered. "I want to speak with Captain Torres." Torres appeared on the communication screen moments later, her expression a mixture of determination and disbelief at finding herself in command of a warship. "Marcus, I have to say this isn't how I expected our partnership to resume. Captain, you're commanding the most advanced ship in your squadron. Your vessel's AI systems are linked directly to Ghost Fleet Alpha's command network. Trust the computer, and it will keep you alive." "Roger that," Torres replied. "And Marcus, thank you for giving us a chance to fight back." The first contact between the opposing fleets came exactly when Marcus's calculations had predicted. The Zephyrian Advance Force, 100 fast attack craft designed to probe human defenses, suddenly found themselves facing impossible opposition. The Ghost Fleet engaged with mechanical precision, their weapons firing in perfectly coordinated volleys that devastated the alien formations. But, more importantly, the human ships proved completely immune to the cyber attacks that had given the Zephyrians such an advantage in previous encounters. "This is impossible," came a transmission from one of the Zephyrian commanders, speaking in accented but fluent English. "Our intelligence indicated the human ships were vulnerable to our electronic warfare systems." Marcus activated the open communication channel that would broadcast his response to both fleets. "Your intelligence was outdated. You've been fighting yesterday's humanity. Today we're something new." What followed was 6 hours of the most intense space combat in human history. The Zephyrians fought with the desperation of a species that had staked everything on one massive assault, while humanity battled with the fury of a people defending their homes and families. The Ghost Fleet performed beyond Marcus's most optimistic projections, their AI systems learning and adapting to Zephyrian tactics in real time. But it was the performance of the modified merchant ships that truly turned the tide of battle. Captains who had spent their careers hauling cargo between star systems suddenly found themselves commanding vessels that could stand against dedicated warships. The AI systems did more than just defend against cyber attacks. They enhanced human decision-making, providing tactical information and suggestions that allowed civilian crews to fight like seasoned veterans. Marcus, Elena called over the communication channel, "You need to see this. The Zephyrians are falling back from the second battle line. Their formation is collapsing." Marcus watched the tactical displays with amazement as the impossible unfolded before his eyes. The Zephyrian fleet, which had been advancing with unstoppable momentum just hours before, was fragmenting under pressure from forces they had not expected to face. The alien commanders had planned their invasion based on Pierce's intelligence about human capabilities, but that intelligence had not included the Ghost Fleet or the AI-enhanced defensive systems. Faced with enemies that were immune to their primary weapons and superior to their expectations, the Zephyrians found their carefully planned assault turning into a rout. But victory came at a cost. Dozens of human ships had been destroyed, including several vessels from the merchant fleet that Marcus had personally modified. Each loss weighed on his conscience, even as he recognized that without his innovations, the losses would have been total. Admiral Hawkins, to all ships, came the announcement that Marcus had been hoping to hear. The Zephyrian main fleet is in full retreat. Pursuit forces will continue to harass their withdrawal, but the immediate threat to coalition space has ended. As the surviving ships began the process of rescue and recovery operations, Marcus found himself thinking about the crew of the Lucky Strike. They had fired him just 2 weeks ago for incompetent repairs that had actually saved their lives. Now, they were thanking him for giving them the weapons and defenses they needed to help save humanity itself. The irony was not lost on him, but it was overshadowed by the larger implications of what had just occurred. Humanity had not just survived the Zephyrian invasion. They had demonstrated capabilities that would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. "Mr. Chinakamura," Admiral Hawkins said as she joined him on the Indomitable's bridge, "I believe congratulations are in order. Your innovations didn't just win this battle. They may have ended the war before it could really begin." Marcus looked out at the star field, where debris from hundreds of ships drifted in the darkness. "The war isn't over, Admiral. This was just the first round. The Zephyrians will adapt, just like their viruses adapted to our countermeasures. Then we'll adapt faster," Admiral Hawkins replied. "With your Ghost Fleet technology and AI-enhanced systems, we have advantages they can't match." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but we can't afford to become overconfident. The moment we stop innovating, stop improving, stop pushing the boundaries of what's possible, someone else will surpass us." In the days that followed the battle, Marcus found himself at the center of a transformation that went far beyond military technology. The success of the AI-enhanced systems had proven that human-AI collaboration could achieve things that neither could accomplish alone. The merchant captains who had fought in the battle became evangelists for the new technology, spreading word throughout the civilian sector about systems that could protect ships from cyber attacks while enhancing crew performance. The military, meanwhile, began placing orders for Ghost Fleet vessels in numbers that would have been unimaginable just weeks before. But perhaps most importantly, the battle had demonstrated something that the Zephyrians and other potential enemies would have to consider. Humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. 3 weeks after the battle, Marcus returned to Meridian Station for the first time since the crisis began. The commercial district buzzed with activity as crews and captains discussed the new defensive systems being installed on their ships. The age of humanity being vulnerable to cyber warfare was ending. Elena met him at the docking bay, her face bright with excitement. "Marcus, you're not going to believe this. Torres wants to offer you a permanent position as chief engineer aboard the Lucky Strike." full authority over all ship modifications, unlimited budget for equipment, and a salary that would make corporate executives jealous. Marcus smiled at the irony. What did you tell her? I told her she was about 3 weeks too late, Elena replied with a grin. Word is that you've been offered the position of Chief Technology Officer for the entire Coalition Defense Force. Among other offers, Marcus confirmed. His father had also asked him to return to the Shin Nakamura Corporation as heir apparent, while several universities had offered him research positions that would allow him to continue developing AI technology. So what are you going to do? Marcus looked out at the star field beyond the station, thinking about all the ships out there that still needed protection, all the crews who deserved the best technology humanity could provide, and all the threats that were certainly gathering in the darkness between stars. I'm going to keep building better ships, he said finally. Whether that's for the military, for corporations, or for independent merchants, I want to make sure that what happened here never happens again. Elena nodded approvingly. The galaxy's most underestimated engineer, finally getting the recognition he deserves. Actually, Marcus said with a smile, I think I prefer being underestimated. It makes the victories so much sweeter when they come. As he walked through the station toward his workshop, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had started 3 years ago as a privileged young man trying to prove himself through honest work. Along the way, he had been fired, dismissed, and underestimated by people who could not see past their own limitations. But those experiences had taught him something that no academy could provide: the value of persistence, innovation, and never giving up on doing what was right, even when others could not understand or appreciate it. The crew of the Lucky Strike had fired him over 2 ship repairs that they considered failures. They had never bothered to check who actually owned the technology that kept their ship running, who had designed the systems they depended on, or who had the power to protect or abandon them when a galaxy turned dangerous. Now they knew, and now everyone knew that sometimes the person you underestimate the most is exactly the one you need when everything is on the line. Marcus Shin Nakamura had started as a hidden genius working in obscurity. But as he began planning the next generation of human spacecraft, he realized that the best victories were not about proving your worth to people who had dismissed you. The best victories were about making sure that nobody else would ever have to face what humanity had just survived alone and unprepared. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of species that would challenge humanity's expansion among the stars. But now they would face humans who had learned the most important lesson of all, that being underestimated was just another word for having the element of surprise. And Marcus intended to make very good use of that surprise for a very long time to come.